Hey everybody, this is JDGaming, back today with an update to Aromages. Now, fair warning, this is called combo Aromages for the simple fact that it's more reminiscent of my Aromage Synchro strategy that, got slaughtered by Master Rule 4 bringing in Link monsters right when that happened, and is very much like Plant Synchro. Basically, Aromages are a fun archetype that go based on, do you have more life than your opponent? So are you healthier, and are you gaining life points? But the problem is, like, half of the archetype isn't very competitively viable. So if you've played, dabbled around with Duel Links or played old school Aromages back when they first came out, you may notice that not all of those cards are the best for the fast environment of today. However, there are some stellar standouts within the archetype that I did want to leverage into some cool plant combos that you couldn't get otherwise, and I think this is the perfect time to do so now that we finally have cards like Aromaseraphy Jasmine and the new Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood to boot. So this is going to be a let's build as always. I'll go through all of my choices and reasonings for this strategy. Again, more of a combo-oriented one than a traditional strategy, but all the sections of the video, including the alphabetical profile, can be found in the description box below, where I have a table of contents with various timestamp links to the parts of the video. If you have no idea where to start with Aromages, this is an okay place, but if you have no idea what they even do, feel free to check out the link I have in the iCard in the top right-hand corner, where I've simultaneously released actually a new style of in-depth introduction, or IDI, to the Aromage theme. It'll go through all of the key cards, as well as some of the tech choices you may usually see within an Aromage deck, and hopefully that'll give you some ideas in addition to this deck you see here. So, without further ado, let's build Aromages. As always, the first step in building a deck is to establish the theme and to build a core that supports your theme's goals. And while we are playing Aromages, I'll get to some of the main deck Aromage monsters a little bit later, because the first thing we want to do is make sure we can actually get our engine going. Much like how warrior decks are using Isolde as their key link monster to get their plays started, we will be aiming to summon one of our couple copies of Aromaseraphy Jasmine, which basically is a lone fire blossom that we can access from our extra deck, as well as a searcher for any plant card, including aroma monsters, if we happen to gain life points, which is an extra bonus that we get for playing the Aromage theme versus any other plant archetype. So in order to help summon Aromage Jasmine, which needs Aromaseraphy Jasmine rather, who requires 2 plant monsters, we're going to start off with 3 copies of our wild card, Lone Fire Blossom. This card, of course, lets us go attribute itself or any other plant monster we control in order to go ahead and special summon any one plant from our deck as a once per turn, but of course not a hard once per turn, which is one of the dumb, broken aspects of that card. We're going to go ahead and leverage that into our Predaplant 𝕵𝗔𝐴, which lets us send a monster from our hand to the graveyard, which in this strategy, as you'll see, is a huge boon to the strategy, enabling further combos. And that lets us go and special summon our 1 copy of 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝑑𝖑𝐿 from our deck. Remember, 𝕵𝗔𝐴 is a hard once per turn that you can only use once per turn, so if you happen to get Ash Blossomed or whatever, your combo may get stopped, and we'll address that issue down the line as well. But essentially, the Cobra will let us go and search our instant fusion, and that does a lot of cool things for us. If nothing else, it just puts a body on board, like our Mud Dragon in the Swamp that I chose to play here. But essentially, it is a free play extender, and depending on what you choose as an instant fusion target, you could potentially get different combos off and customize this deck to your fitting. I'll go ahead and talk about why Mud Dragon is my preferred pick in just a second here. But essentially, you don't care if you draw the 𝕵𝗔𝐴 or the Lone Fire Blossom all that much. You just want to go and make sure you can use both of these guys and get your free search. From here, you have 2 plant monsters, and that's the biggest thing. Yeah, I know I use the Predaplant engine quite a bit on the channel, but the whole point in this strategy is it is the most efficient way for us to go ahead and consistently summon our Aromaseraphy Jasmine, which opens up 2 link zones and lets us go ahead and accomplish all of our goals using its 2 plant-based search abilities. So the first ability, let's say you have nothing else in your entire hand except stuff that you need to activate that 𝕵𝗔𝐴, right? You can go ahead and immediately use the instant fusion you just searched off of your combo in order to go for, Mud Dragon as a free monster, tribute this guy off, and if you've not already seen a Lone Fire Blossom, probably go ahead and summon one just so that you could tribute this monster and then have it in the graveyard in case you want a monster reborn it or something down the line. Otherwise, you could go ahead and directly jump into some of your key plays, and although there is some variation in what you're able to do here, one standard play I do want to show here is, let's say you go for your Glow Up Bulb, right? Glow Up Bulb can turn into, as a level 1 monster, a copy of 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓 from your extra deck, and then you could go ahead and mill a card, revive your Glow Up Bulb, and this is a perfect setup for turn 2 in order to start breaking your opponent's boards, so long as, you know, they're not negating your plays outright here. Basically, you can go for a huge slew of Link 4 monsters using this setup. You can obviously turn, you know, these 4 Link materials of monsters that are all effect monsters for one of the 𝕿𝖆𝖊𝖓𝖙, you know, in order to go steal your opponent's Aromax or something, or go ahead and, you know, push for game here using something like your 𝕿𝖆𝖊 Sword. But you can also take it a step further. Let's say I take Glow Up Bulb and the Aromaseraphy Jasmine and turn it into a Link 3 monster. For this example, we'll use Unicorn here. You have now a pair of monsters that total Link 4 that were summoned both from the extra deck, and so you can actually combine them for the new this one's called 𝗮𝖵𝐻𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖓𝖓𝐹 Aromax, which is, you know, a mouthful of a name, nothing to do with any of those archetypes, but essentially this card is awesome. If you guys liked the Darkest Diabolos deck, or Diablos deck, what do you want to call him, this guy is basically an extra deck version of Diablos, and he is a monster. He's got perfect arrows left and right and down diagonal to you, basically open up no matter what. He only needs 2 or more monsters from the extra deck that you control in order to summon, which again is very easy to do with 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝖓 and any other Link 3, or even a pair of Link 2s if you feel so inclined to do so. But this card basically has a handful of abilities that make it amazing. Can't be targeted by any of your opponent's card effects, which is dumb because it's basically Diabolos in that sense, and it's even a strict upgrade off things like Borreload Dragon, who are only protected from monster effects targeting them. It also becomes a lightning rod from your opponent's attacks, making it so none of your opponent's monsters can attack your own except this guy, as long as he was Link summoned. So doesn't work if he was revived, but he's still an amazing card to protect the rest of your board, enabling things like Naturia Beast and Borreload Savage Dragon to wreak havoc on your opponent's strategy because they can't get over this annoying lightning rod of a monster. On top of that, if it battles a special summon monster in either direction, it gains attack equal to that monster's attack during the damage calculation only. But since he has 3,000, he basically goes over any of your opponent's monsters, does 3,000 damage to the face, probably kills their monster, and now they didn't get over it in battle. So this card is very annoying to deal with. And then finally, if they do happen to use something like Regeki, Black Rose Dragon, or even if they kaiju it off the board, if they send it from your field to the graveyard, you're basically able to go ahead and shuffle one of their cards they control back into the deck as revenge for getting rid of the card. So lots of good protection. The easiest way, honestly, to get rid of Aromax is going to be if your opponent summons Borreload Dragon. But, you know, it's just something to watch out for. It's not a perfect card, but it is a heck of a card to have to deal with, and you know, you could go multiple routes here. I actually went previously and tried to stop Borreload Dragon with things like Infinite Impermanence, but then I tweaked the deck a little bit and went more for just combo options. Remember, this and I guess your 𝕿𝖆𝖊𝖓𝖓 plays are basically your bottom line plays if you have no other extender in the deck, but anyone who knows plants knows that that's never going to be the case. There are so many extenders that we have for the strategy, and so we'll build the rest of the deck, main and extra, with that in mind, that this is our core and we can expand these plays based on what we add to the strategy. Next up, we'll actually incorporate the Aromage section to the main deck that plays off of that previous combo and sometimes can even help us get to that combo in the first place. Starting off with the main deck all-star, we're going with Aromages Jasmine. This card, basically, I talked about in that in-depth intro, but essentially it is a Jar of Greed per copy once per turn if you gain life points, and that's either turn, so you could draw 1, 2, or even 3 cards from your deck depending on how many of these guys you're able to stack onto the board, and you get an additional normal summon as long as you're healthier than your opponent, and that monster you're trying to summon is a plant monster. So this card basically is the reason we're not playing Brilliant Fusion and Gem Knight Seraph Knight in this particular strategy. It's because it stacks with that ability, or rather doesn't stack, it overlaps, and so you can't get the extra normal summon through that route anyway, and so I figured, well, Instant Fusion doesn't create more brick situations in your main deck. We play plenty of those as it is, and Aromage Jasmine basically helps enable our plays further, because now we can go and normal summon this, go and normal summon another plant as long as we're able to gain life, and then that's 2 monsters that we can turn into Jasmine as well, and we can even go for the Lone Fire Blossom or Ophrys Scorpio play off of this card. So this thing is just phenomenal. It's also a great card to summon off of your Jasmine in order to help accumulate multiple draw power cards all at once. So overall, yeah, you gotta play this card if you're playing Aromages. It is one of the key reasons to do so. The other main deck monster that we'll be playing of the original 4 is Aromage Rosemary. So this is a level 4 monster, and it's mainly in here for 2 things. First of all, it's a level 4 monster, which means you're able to go ahead and make your level 5 synchro that we'll talk about in just a moment very, very consistently. So this card is fantastic just for enabling a slew of plays through the new 𝕵𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊, World Chalice Justiciar, basically going through adding another monster born to your combo. It's just nuts. And so we need to have access to a level 4 monster we can consistently access in order to make our big synchro plays. But on top of that, she has an ability that lets us make all of our plant monsters block our opponent's monster effects from responding to us in the damage step, and that's really cool because now we can get through floaters like Burning Abyss. We can go ahead and stop your opponent's battle hand traps or something along those lines. So very interesting card, especially because she extends that power to all of your plants. She is a force to be reckoned with. And the other ability, I guess, changing battle positions, is an interesting one for sure. You can go ahead and combo it with your Jasmine, who may be in attack position. You could combo it with your own Boral Sword Dragon in order to, maybe shift a monster defense so that you can attack twice with that card, but then you could go ahead and make it so Rosemary shifts it back to attack position and then it can attack again. Lots of little things. Just do keep in mind, like I do mention all the time when I talk about this card, that position switching is a mandatory trigger effect, so you do have to switch something, and it may end up being her if you're not careful. So just watch out for how she triggers, and you'll be just fine with her. Then we gotta actually gain life points, right? And anyone who plays plants knows about Spore and Glow Up Bulb. I already talked about Glow Up Bulb previously here, but we're talking about here Aromaseraphy Angelica, which kind of is like a mirror version of those cards as well. It's a level 1 monster that basically serves as a hand trap during your turn in order to gain you life points equal to the attack power of an Aromage monster that lies in your graveyard. And don't forget, now that we have copies of our Aromaseraphy Jasmine as well, and this is a link monster we can use for our combos, this thing actually ends up being a card that we can access on the field as an Aromage name and as an Aromage name in the graveyard as well very easily. So Angelica is very easy to trigger in order to gain us some life points, unlock our other cards, and bring out the full potential of those plants. But on top of that, if you happen to be, controlling an Aromage monster and have higher life than your opponent, which is what you're trying to do in this deck in some way, shape, or form, then Angelica can come back from the graveyard for free, and although she gets banished if she leaves the field, she becomes perfect synchro and link material, and that's just amazing that this deck has access to essentially 3 more copies of Glow Up Bulb or Spore for the combos that we just described, and things that you can imagine one extra plant monster will do for you. So very powerful card all around, honestly. Whereas previously I was thinking about dropping Aromaseraphy Angelica just for its inconsistencies in some ways before the release of some of the more recent support we got. With the release of Jasmine, this card is like, I honestly wish I had like 5 or 6 of these things to have access to. You're able to search this thing very easily. In fact, if you control your Aromaseraphy Jasmine, you can pitch an Angelica, gain life equal to a card in your graveyard, and then immediately search another Angelica so that you just gain life points for free. And then you can revive that Angelica because now your life is probably higher than your opponent. So extra summons for free, yes please. Don't forget, you can also go ahead and search any plant monster. So you could go for a Lone Fire Blossom or whatever combo piece you may be requiring with this card as well. But Angelica is hands down the best way to enable the full potential of your Aromaseraphy Jasmine within the Aromage archetype. Then from there, we're also thinking about, well, what if you don't have the setup in the graveyard in order to go for your Aromage play? And that's where Aroma Garden comes in. This card basically requires you to have an Aroma monster on the field, and it is an ignition effect during your own turn. Basically, when you're not, resolving anything else and your opponent's not responding during your main phase, you can gain 500 life points, which is cool because it triggers all your abilities and it makes you potentially substantially higher than your opponent, but also all monsters you control, whether or not they're plants, whether or not they're aromas, gain 500 attack and defense until the end of your opponent's next turn, even if this card leaves the field. And I actually learned this through Duel Links a little while back, but that text wording basically means that even if you were to play this card and then this card and then this card, not only do you gain, 1,500 points of boost between all three, which that part I knew. Even if you summon a monster after the fact, it's still going to gain the effect. Easiest way for me to picture it is imagine Aroma Garden as exactly what it is. If you have the smell of flowers, wafting around on the field, any monster that smells it is going to gain that power boost, and that's how Aroma Garden works. It's going to give the power boost per copy that you activated and resolve that turn, for all your monsters, whether or not they were present at the time. They're entering the presence of that garden. They can still feel those flowers, and so they're actually going to get very powerful because of that, meaning it's actually not a bad card to draw in multiples. I still didn't want to go overboard with terraforming, thanks to, 𝗮𝖆𝖊𝖓𝖏 being much more accessible, and another card we're going to talk about coming up here next. But basically, 3 Aroma Garden you can't go wrong with. It basically allows you to consistently enable your plays, and it actually goes for some combos as well. You could actually go ahead and between Aroma Garden and your Jasmine, although you would need some other plant in your hand as well, you get a free draw off of this. You could get an extra normal summon. Those two can turn into your Aromaseraphy Jasmine, and it's very easy then to extend that play further. Maybe you have 𝗮𝖊𝖓𝖏𝑇𝑑, or you're able to bring out some other plant monster. We'll talk about some ways to extend this play further, specifically because of how good that basic setup is, but essentially Aroma Garden can help extend your plays as well, thanks to instantly activating your Jasmine and enabling her plays. Then from here, we're talking about another great way to gain life points, and that's going to be Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood. This card is not the best thing outside of Aromages and outside of time scenarios, but it is a phenomenal card in Aromages. Basically, it's the same stats as any of the Ghost Girl hand traps, like Ash Blossom, Ghost Ogre, all those things. It's a water monster. It's still a zombie tuner, and it reads, during either player's turn except the end phase quick effect, you can go ahead and discard this card to apply this effect this turn. You can only use this effect of Spooky Dogwood once per turn. And it's each time your opponent special summons an effect monster or monsters during the main phase or battle phase, you gain life equal to that monster's attack. And if you did not gain life points with this effect because you were trying to preemptively stop your opponent from special summoning anything, you have your life points during the end phase. So other than the mind game scenarios that this creates, because you could in theory pitch this on purpose to potentially give your opponent the appealing option of having your life points for doing nothing, and then, just ending their turn that way, they probably won't end up doing that. This is a good way to trigger all of your life gain abilities during your turn, which means you're changing your opponent's battle positions with your Aromaseraphy Rosemary, or Aromage Rosemary, rather. You're able to go ahead and trigger all your draws per Jasmine. You're able to go ahead and get a free search off of your Aromaseraphy Jasmine. So lots of cool things you're able to do with this card. And using the Synchro monster we'll talk about, you can actually go ahead and negate one of your opponent's cards as well. So very, very powerful card. It basically makes it so you're going to have higher life than your opponent, if nothing else. Yes, it's decent at triggering your abilities, but the main reason I like playing this is you're pretty much healthier than your opponent if you're gaining life points equal to every one of your opponent's special summon monsters within a combo. So just chain it to one of their summoning effects, and then reap the rewards with these two cards, Dried Winds, because this thing, I'm not playing Humid Winds anymore because it is too slow to play when you basically have a better version of the same card in your Link monster, but Dried Winds is just phenomenal with Spooky Dogwood. This continuous trap reads, if you gain life points, target a face-up monster your opponent controls and destroy it. Again, mandatory, just like Rosemary, but you're killing your opponent's card, so it's actually not a bad thing. And if you happen to control an Aromage monster or Aroma monster while your life is at least 3,000 greater than your opponent's, again, very easy to do with Spooky Dogwood, you can pay life points equal to the difference, basically pay down to your opponent's level and destroy all their face-up monsters they control, as long as the monster's attacks that you destroy combined are less than or equal to the amount you paid. You can only use each effect of Dried Winds once per turn, but what this basically means is if I go ahead and use Dogwood, I can guarantee with Dried Winds that I can kill all my opponent's monsters that they just special summon as long as we started at equal or better for us. And that is insane. It's basically a trap card Raigeki that your opponent may not even see coming, because you could flip Dried Winds when you need to and then clear your opponent's board, maybe when they're trying to attack you, maybe when they're trying to go for, one card that's a little too much for you to handle. You can get rid of their entire field and actually leverage all the free life points you get from Spooky Dogwood into nuke your opponent's board and then now you're probably not dead, which is really, really awesome. This card used to be just like I mean, play 1 or 2 of it just so if you do see it, it gives you some free 1 card pops here and there. But no, this card becomes absolutely nuts when you're able to use it with Spooky Dogwood. And don't forget, you technically can use both of its abilities in the same turn. It's just each ability is a hard once per turn. So you could pop one of your opponent's cards to soften their field and then follow up with Dogwood to just nuke everything if you have to. So Dried Winds becomes even better in this strategy now, thanks to Spooky Dogwood. And finally, this is kind of the glue that will take us to the final section of the deck. Here we go to the main deck tech and fleshing out the rest of things. It's going to be Super Solar Nutrient. This card basically says you activate it by tributing a level 2 or lower plant monster. It could be face up or face down, so if you're thinking things are risky, just set your Jasmine and it still works. In exchange, you get to special summon a plant monster whose level is less than or equal to 3 plus the tributed monster. So it's a really weird way of wording this effect. I've had some people say, wait, doesn't that mean like it only summons 3 or something, or like it has to summon that? No, basically the way this card works is, let's say you started with a level 2 monster like Jasmine. You add 3, it's 5. You could summon a level 5 or lower plant monster from your deck. If you tributed a level 1 monster like 𝕿𝖆𝖇𝖑𝖊𝑊, let's say, you could go ahead and summon anything 4 or lower. But the cool thing is this card fits perfectly not only with our Aromage Jasmine like I just mentioned, but it lets us go and summon either Fire Blossom for any play or 𝗿𝗍𝖐𝗄 for our main bread and butter combo. So this card becomes 3 extra copies of Lone Fire effectively because we have so many cards to access our key plays. And don't forget, even if you draw Lone Fire Blossom, you can always Lone Fire into one of those targets and tribute that for another Lone Fire or for 𝗿𝗍𝖐𝗄, effectively turning this into a kind of upstart goblin that lets you cherry pick what plant monster you want to end up in the graveyard, and that can be key for your big combos as well. So Super Solar Nutrient, I am a huge fan of, especially in Aromages. It basically enables you to do so much more off of the level 2 plant monsters you're already playing. And don't forget, you can also use this off of 𝗮𝗻𝐿𝐼𝐻 as a level 1 as well. Combos still hold because you're not summoning level 5 plants. You only want to summon level 4 or lower. Mainly 3 is in, Super Solar Nutrient. Adding 3 basically guarantees you're going to be able to get those levels off. So this is kind of the segue then into the other plants that we could potentially access with Super Solar Nutrient. I'm bringing back an old trio of monsters that I very much love to play. I guess one of them isn't so old. We'll get him first. Spore is amazing in this strategy, not only because he's a level 1 tuner monster that you could search off of all of your, key combos here, but he comes back as a big level. And ever since the release of great synchro support like Borreload Savage Dragon, being able to bring back a level 4 tuner has just been amazing. This basically lets you go ahead and leverage one of your fallen link monsters, even something as simple as, your in-combo Aromaseraphy Jasmine, equip it to not only power up Borreload Savage Dragon's attack by half of your link monster, but you also get a number of turns of once per turn negations equal to your link rating of that monster. So what that basically means is if I go ahead and equip a link 2 to this guy, I get 2 once per turn just negate a card or effect that activates. Doesn't destroy it, but honestly, making the effect not go through is what's going to end your opponent in a lot of these scenarios. So that's why we're going to play the Borreload Savage Dragon rather. Spore is already going to fit in our combo much the same way that 𝗿𝗆𝐿𝐼𝐻 does, and although it doesn't come back as a level 1 for our Link Kuriboh plays, it is still a phenomenal access to all of our other synchro monsters. It's also a great way for us to access cards like our Aromaseraphy Rosemary. Now, this card's basically an upgraded version of our Rosemary, and you would expect that to be, 2 kind of effects that follow the same pattern, and indeed it does. It's a level 5 monster, so you basically need any 2 monsters that add up to 5, but the main way they want you to bring it out is like a 1 and a 4. You could mix it up with Spore, though. You could go like Spore banishes 𝗿𝗆𝐿𝐼𝐻 to become a 2. Combine it with a 3. Lots of ways to bring out this generic synchro. Starts off with 2000 attack, but her healthy ability is all your plants, including herself, gain 500 attack and defense while she's on the field, and you're healthier. That's cool because she's a 2500 beater now, and you can go ahead and boost her further with Aroma Garden, which might give you not only, the higher life than your opponent, but also trigger its second ability, which lets you go and target a card your opponent controls and negate its effects until the end of the turn. While that is a little bit tricky, not impossible, but tricky to coordinate with your opponent's turn because, let's face it, this is a trigger ability that happens after you gain life. So basically, if I gain life off of the 𝗮𝗻𝐿𝐼𝐻, yeah, I gain life. I'll trigger this, but I can't chain it to something my opponent's playing because their effect has resolved by the time my new chain starts and tries to negate them. However, it is good for negating, you know, continuous things that they may need on the field, and also it's an amazing way to get through roadblocks and floodgates your opponent has thrown at you, because now during your turn, you're basically free, you know, gain any life points through any means, and you're able to go and blank one of your opponent's cards, so you could stop their 𝕿𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖓𝖊𝖊𝖊 from stopping you from attacking. You could stop, you know, an annoying monster from floodgating your entire game plan, or an annoying spell or trap, or a field spell, or whatever the case may be. Whatever ails you, you can go ahead and just wish it away with the Aromaseraphy Rosemary. So that's why this card's in here. It's basically a better board breaker than anything else, more so than a responder. But, you know, Spore opens up all your synchro plays, so we're definitely going to be playing him. I did want to mention him separately just because he didn't really fit with the 𝕿𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊 portion of the deck, but he's very much a portion of the plant core. And then from here, I do want to talk about, I guess, the duo of plant monsters that I'm returning here. It's going to be Rose Lover and World Carrot Weight Champion. I played this deck without these cards for a while just because I was thinking, well, they're not the most competitive cards on their own. And in the, like a vacuum, it's true because they are bricks. You don't necessarily want to draw them as, you know, things if you could choose. However, they're not terrible if you draw them because 𝕵𝖊𝐹 Scorpio pitches them to the graveyard where they're live. You can access them whenever you would like with your Lone Fires and your with your Jasmine. So these cards, you got to give them credit. You're basically not going to dead draw them as much as you would think. They are no 𝗮𝖊𝖓𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖘. They're actually very powerful enablers, especially considering what they're able to do in tandem with each other. So Rose Lover says if she's in the graveyard, you can banish her in order to special summon any one plant from your hand. So Lone Fire Blossom, Jasmine, whatever you want, it's out there on the field, even extra tuner monsters if you need to. And if you do, it's unaffected by your opponent's trap effects that turn. And that's cool because that means in theory, if you were to, you know, try and special summon your Lone Fire Blossom from your hand, which your opponent wouldn't necessarily know you have until it resolves, now it's too late for your opponent to respond with their Solemn Strike if they chose not to respond directly to the Rose Lover. So it's basically a good way of kind of like smoke screening what you're playing, and then you just bring out whatever plant best fits the situation, and you're able to go ahead and protect it from traps to boot. So you know, nothing else after that's protected, so watch out for that. And it is a hard once per turn, but this basically gives you a lot of flexibility in being, you know, another super solar target, basically doubling as another Lone Fire and getting those Lone Fires and targets out into play. Then World Carrot Weight Champion's a level 4 dark plant with 1900 attack, 0 defense, so haha, he actually is a Garnet. But if this card is in your graveyard, you can go ahead and send any plant monster you control or from your hand to the graveyard in order to special summon this card back to the field, hard once per turn, and you can't send a copy of himself to the graveyard in order to summon himself. That's why we play just one copy. But essentially, these cards really extend your plays further. Rose Lover brings something out directly from your hand if you're already holding it, and World Carrot Weight Champion lets you discard your 𝕿𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊 spores, or maybe even an Aromage monster that you'd rather have as a target for your 𝗮𝖊𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵 in order to get your combos rolling, and you get a free level 4 monster on the field to boot. So very easy to make, you know, big plays with these cards. World Carrot Weight Champion's a phenomenal synchro material that can also be leveraged into your link plays as well. And the fact that he's able to manipulate your hand and graveyard is a very nice piece of flexible tech for this strategy. So I just love what these two cards are able to do, and I ended up adding them back in and thinking, why did I ever get rid of them in the first place? To wrap up kind of the you know, the plant part of this section here, we'll talk about, you know, the 3 staple guys. I mean, these guys are pretty much my staple trio. I finally got a secret rare version of 1-for-1 that you guys may see how I did soon. So yay. But basically, you know, these guys are things I play in every single deck these days. But essentially, the Foolish Burial lets you go ahead and kickstart any of your combos and gets you a free extension if you hit like a 𝕿𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊 Spore or 𝗮𝖊𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵. 1-for-1 does the same thing, although it pitches a card from your hand, which could be seen as bad. Again, that enables plays in a plant deck, and on top of that, you get 2 uses out of your 𝕿𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊𝖊 Spore or 𝗮𝖊𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵. So even more powerful here. And Monster Born lets you go from anything from reviving your synchro monsters or link monsters with their abilities mostly intact, or you could go ahead and bring back a Lone Fire Blossom for a wild card, or even another summon of like your tuner monster to make a bigger play. So Very powerful set of cards that basically support the theme even further. They didn't really fit into the core this time because they technically are part of your expanded core, I suppose, but they're not directly necessary for your Link play, you know, at the beginning of the game. That's why they're kind of here. But then I want to talk about some of the main and extra deck tech that really top up this deck. And don't be fooled by the positioning of these cards. These may be at the end, but think of it as a save for last scenario. These cards are very important to the strategy. So I talked about how you can easily go for a level 5 synchro monster. In fact, you could even go and in a lot of scenarios have Jasmine. Let's actually put together the scenario. So if you have Jasmine out and any monster that you contribute that is not named, you know, Mud Dragon of the Swamp, you can keep him on the board and bring out your 𝗮𝖊𝖊𝖓𝖓𝐿 Spore from your deck, and that will let you go and synchro these two in order to summon a level 5 monster. Although you could go for Aromaseraphy Jasmine, the best card to go for in this scenario is this 𝗍𝖏𝖊, the World Chalice Justiciar, because basically she has two killer abilities in this strategy that make her just nuts. First, if she's synchro summoned, add a World Legacy card or a World Chalice card, I don't remember which, I think it's World Legacy card, from your deck to your hand. So let's add World Legacy Succession, which is basically monster born to one of your zones a Link monster points to. We could further expand our combos, which is nuts. And on top of that, the second ability is something you don't want to shrug off. I did shrug it off because it basically says you can go ahead and synchro summon, or whether if this card was synchro summoned and it's sent from the field to the graveyard through your Link plays, synchro plays, whatever, you could go ahead and special summon World Chalice monsters from your hand or graveyard except Justiciar. I play a copy of Beckoned by the World Chalice, a level 4 vanilla. You know, this is truly a Garnet in this deck. But basically, as long as this thing isn't in our hand, we're able to go ahead and summon it off of Justiciar. And on top of that, if it's in our hand, pitch it off of your 𝗮𝐿𝐴, and everything is fixed here, right? So the whole point of this is now if we go for our Justiciar, even just off of these two cards, let's say you link these guys off into, oh, I don't know, you could go Unicorn, or you could go for your Zephyr Metaltron. The whole point of this card, yes, it has decent abilities. Feel free to look it up if you want. I don't really care about them because I never use that ability. Real thing is, it's a Link monster that needs, or has 3 arrows, and all you need is 2 or more monsters from the extra deck that add up to Link 3, which basically enables our combo here. From here, 𝗍𝖏 has already given us a World Legacy Succession, basically a monster born into one of these 3 zones, and it now special summons Beckoned by the World Chalice from our deck, and as a level 4 Earth monster, we could go ahead and combine that with our 𝗮𝖊𝖊𝖓𝐿 to go Naturia Beast, much like we could have with Mud Dragon. We could go ahead and turn this thing with Spore into a Borreload Savage Dragon. Beckoned could just become a normal monster that we turn into another Link material as well. So all around, just adding a single copy of Beckoned by the World Chalice adds a lot of flavor to the strategy, basically turning 𝗍𝖏 into, you take this, make it with 2 cards, and now you get 2 or more cards off of it, making it totally free, upgrading your Link monster, getting things set up in your graveyard, and basically you don't lose anything. It's much like Rose Lover and World Carrot Weight Champion, where yes, they're bricks in the strictest sense that you don't want to draw them if possible. Same thing with Beckoned, but you don't have a problem if you do, because most of the time you're able to pitch them off of things like Over Scorpio, through Lone Fire Blossom or otherwise, or through Super Solar Nutrient, or you could go ahead and pitch it with 1 for 1. You have like 10 ways that you can go ahead and get them out of your hand, so it's not a big deal, but they're all live even if you draw them. And if you don't, even better, you have other cards in your hand that aren't dead cards that you could potentially extend your plays with even further. So basically the deck was built with the concept of you're so flexible that losing a card or 2 every few games isn't that big a deal, and most of the time you won't draw into many or any of those cards in the first place. But the ceiling with this deck that you get from adding Beckoned, adding World Carrot Weight, and adding Rose Lover, it just becomes so much higher than when you don't have them in here that it is definitely worth considering. And anyone who doesn't know Naturia Beast, I mean, welcome to the channel, I guess. Stops your opponent's spell cards by milling 2 cards from the top of your deck. Does need Earth monsters to do, but Mud Dragon of the Swamp can turn itself into an Earth monster. The reason I chose it over 𝗮𝐿 Warrior is because Mud Dragon's more flexible. You could turn it into any attribute, and he does have a protection ability for any monster that shares an attribute with it. Basically stops your opponent from messing with those monsters, and it's stronger than 𝗮𝐿 Warrior, which was previously my target for this card as well. So basically all that stuff fits in here. And then if you really were curious and didn't bother looking this guy up yet, he's a 25 beater who basically says you could get rid of this card and another extra deck monster your opponent controls, banish them for a turn, and then they come back, so it ruins your opponent's Link zones. And If you happen to lose one of the monsters that this guy's pointing to, you can recur one of your monsters from your graveyard to your hand as well, enabling live play. So it's like a good backup ability, but you don't really play it for that all the time. You just want the zones. And don't forget, let's say after bringing this stuff out, you have access to like a 𝕿𝖆𝖊𝖓𝖑 or something through a level 1 monster. You could go and upgrade this into Aromax as well. And there have been many, many games where I've gone and summoned 𝕿𝖆𝖊𝖏𝖑 and summoned out an Aromax, and have gone where is it? The 𝗿𝗏𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖘, all equipped to this guy as well. So like this is a very feasible board that happens with this deck quite often. So play around with it. There are so many ways to get to this end that again, like start with that bread and butter combo, draw some test hands, see how it all feels. Feel free to experiment with it a bit. But basically, that's kind of the ceiling that we have with this strategy. Lots of negation, lots of power plays, and all very consistently because we're using plants, of course. And then the last 5 cards I'm talking about are just to finish off everything. Again, not to be forgotten, 3 Called by the Grave here. I love this new special legend collection version of this. But basically, this card is in here at 3 because it's not a hard once per turn, and it saves your lone Fire Blossom, which you have like 10 ways of accessing pretty much. From getting stopped by your opponent's card. So it's just too important not to play in this strategy. You want your combos to go off, and the payoff of letting your combos go off makes this thing amazing. And don't forget, this card is just so powerful in general that honestly, if you set it on top of a single negation, it makes your board so much better. So definitely want to have access to this card. Don't skip on it. And then the last 2 link monsters for our extra deck are Nightmare Phoenix, mainly for versatility. Getting rid of spells and traps is nice. Getting rid of cards from our hand is nice. But on top of that, it's just a nice piece of link climbing that we could do. Powers up our 𝗿𝗏𝖊𝖓𝖙 by a little bit stronger than our Aromaseraphy Jasmine. So depending on the combo, you may actually go ahead and maybe upgrade a copy of Jasmine with this into your Aromax, then summon a 𝗿𝗏𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖓 using the Phoenix instead. It comes up every so often, but it's just in here as a versatile playmaker here. And then �11 is in here, although I didn't mention him as extensively as in the past with the Brilliant Fusion 𝗿𝗔𝖓𝐻 combo. It's still fully accessible through this deck as well, and there are definitely games where if you can't go for your Jasmine play as easily, you might as well just turn all your resources into this card, get new resources, and then leverage the special summons and power of this strategy in order to go for other plays using �11 as your enabler. It all still works, and that's why that card still has to be played in here at 1. If you watched the video in its entirety, thanks. Hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing the creation of the strategy as much as I did playing around with it, tweaking it. There's just still so many potential directions that this deck could take, and I honestly don't feel like you can easily find a final form to this strategy. But for now, I feel very happy with how things are turning out. It's great to be playing Aromages again in 2019 of all things. And yeah, so this is kind of the benchmark. Feel free to share your thoughts on the strategy down below. Well, let's jump into the main deck here, shall we? We got 3 copies of Aromaseraphy Angelica, Jasmine, and Rosemary here. Got triple of the new Ghost Sister and Spooky Dogwood. Got a 𝗿𝗏𝖊𝖏𝑚, triple Lone Fire Blossom, and then the Predator Plant engine of 1 Darling Tonia Cobra and triple 𝗿𝗔𝖓𝐻. Then we got a Rose Lover, Spore, and World Carrot Weight Championess Tech, as well as Beckoned by the World Chalice for our 𝗮𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖊𝖓𝖙𝖘 to extend our plays even further. Then we got for spells 3 copies of Aroma Garden, 3 copies of Called by the Grave, Foolish Burial, Instant Fusion, Monsterborn, 1-for-1, and then triple Super Solar Nutrient, and the 1 World Legacy Succession that we'll be fetching off of Eve as well. And then 2 Dried Winds to basically take advantage of Ghost Sister to the fullest, because that card is just nuts when you're gaining life points equal to all your opponent's attacks, right? We got, for our extra deck, 𝕿𝖆𝐿𝐴𝐴, just 1 copy at link 1. Then we got Aromaseraphy Jasmine, a pair of those at link 2, as well as a Nightmare Phoenix. We got Nightmare Unicorn and Zephyr Metaltron at link 3. We got Borreload Dragon, Borrelsora Dragon, and we got Mech Knight Crusadia Aromax, and �11 Skulldread at link 4, so 4 link 4s. And then for our other monsters, we got level 5 synchros, 3 of them, Aromaseraphy Rosemary, Eve, the World Chalice Justiciar, and Naturia Beast. Then we got Borreload Savage Dragon as a mighty level 8, and then Mud Dragon of the Swamp as our instant fusion target. That's it for now, but feel free to grab one of these videos on your way out. If you really enjoyed what you saw today, remember to subscribe to JD Gaming for more Yu-Gi-Oh videos. Thanks guys, this is JD Gaming, hope you guys enjoyed as always, and I'll see you guys next time.